63 years on this earth, and the only time I've ever left my own dinner table early was the night my father had a stroke in 1987. December 25th was the second time. My name is Gene Hartwell. I built a contracting and property management company in Columbus, Ohio, over 40 years. Started with a single rental property on Brighton Road and a willingness to work weekends while other people didn't. The Bexley neighborhood knows my name, not because I advertise it, because I showed up for 31 years and did what I said I was going to do. I raised 2 children in the house on Drexel Avenue. Derek, who works with me and has his grandfather's patience and his mother's common sense, and Lacey, my daughter, who has her mother's warmth, and I discovered too late her mother's habit of confiding in people she loves without checking first whether those people deserve it. Lacey married Craig Pruitt 4 years ago. I attended the wedding. I gave a toast. I meant every word of it because at that point I had only known Craig for 11 months, and optimism is a gift you give your children even when your instincts are whispering. My instincts stopped whispering about 18 months in. December 25th, Wednesday, 6:15 in the evening. My dining room. 50 people. The long tables we set up every year. Rented tables. Norma's good linens. The centerpieces she starts planning in October because she believes Christmas dinner is the one event in any given year that should be done without compromise. Edna, my mother, 81 years old, still sharp enough to beat anyone at the table at cards, was seated to my left. Frank Caulfield, my business partner of 22 years, was 4 seats down with his wife. People I've known since my 30s. People whose opinion of me is, after decades of shared work and shared life, not nothing. Craig was holding court from the middle of the table. Craig enjoys holding court. He has a salesman's timing and a performer's need for the room's attention, and at family dinners, particularly my family dinners, he has apparently decided that these qualities should be deployed at full volume. The early part of dinner was fine. The turkey was good. The wine was moving. Edna told the story about the blizzard of '78 that she's told every Christmas for 30 years, and everyone at the table who has heard it 30 times laughed like it was the first. Then Craig refilled his glass. I've noticed over 4 years that Craig's volume increases in direct proportion to his wine consumption. This is not an unusual quality in a human being. What is unusual is the specific direction the volume travels. It travels toward me. Small digs, always framed as affection. Gene, how many times have you told that story? Is it 40 or 50? The table laughs. I smile. I say nothing. Because I am 63 years old, and I have long since learned that the most powerful response to a man performing for a room is to give him nothing to react to. But December 25th, Craig didn't stop at a small dig. He raised his glass, he waited for the table to quiet, and because Craig has genuine charisma when he wants to use it, the table did quiet. And in that quiet, in front of 50 people, including my mother and my business partner, and my son, and my daughter who was watching her husband with an expression I couldn't quite read from across the table, Craig Pruitt told a story. About me, about 1987, about a foreclosure on a property in Franklinton that I had confided to Lacey, in private, in the context of teaching her that failure is not the end of anything. That I had once lost a building to the bank in the early years when I didn't know yet what I was doing. Careful who you take financial advice from, Craig announced, glass raised, grinning around the table. This man once handed a building back to the bank, which, if you think about it, explains why he gives so much of it away now. He's still apologizing for the one he lost. The laugh that followed was not universal, but it was enough. Edna put her fork down. Frank Caulfield looked at his plate. Derek looked at me. I looked at Craig for 3 full seconds. He was still smiling, the comfortable smile of a man who believes he is among friends, and that friends laugh at each other, and that nothing here has a cost. He had no idea what anything cost. I picked up my napkin, set it on the table beside my plate, stood up, turned to Norma beside me, and said quietly enough that only she heard, "I'll be back by 9. Norma looked at my face. She did not ask questions. She picked up her wineglass and turned back to the table and said something to Edna that made Edna laugh. And the table's attention moved, and I walked through my own dining room, through my own kitchen, out to my own garage, and got in my car. Sid Baxter lives in Upper Arlington, 11 minutes from my house on Drexel. I called him from the driveway. "Gene?" Background noise. Family, music, the particular warmth of Christmas evening. "Sid? You home?" "It's Christmas, Gene. Of course I'm I need an hour. I'm on my way. A pause. What happened? I'll tell you when I get there. Put the eggnog away. This is a bourbon conversation. Sid answered the door in a Christmas sweater with a reindeer on it that I will never let him forget. He took one look at my face, stepped back, and said, "Living room. I'll get the laptop." He is precise, thorough, and has the remarkable quality of being completely unsurprised by anything. In 19 years, I have never seen him react to a number, good or bad, with anything other than the same measured analysis. It is why I trust him with everything. Craig made a joke at Christmas dinner, I said, settling into his couch, about the Franklinton property. Sid looked up from the laptop. The foreclosure. The foreclosure. In front of 50 people, including Frank, including my mother. A pause. How much detail? Enough. He framed me as a cautionary tale. I picked up the bourbon Sid's wife Linda had placed on the coffee table without being asked, because Linda Baxter has also known me for 19 years and has good instincts. He used information Lacey shared with him in confidence, and he used it to get a laugh at a dinner I hosted. Sid set the laptop down, looked at me over his glasses with the expression he uses when a client has just described a situation that requires a specific kind of thinking. "You want to talk about the estate plan?" "I had a meeting with Leonard Fitch scheduled for January 4th anyway," I said. Craig just moved it up by 10 days, nodded slowly. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I've been putting off a decision for 8 months because I didn't want to make it feel pointed," I said. "Craig made it pointed tonight, so I'm going to stop being polite about it and finish what Leonard and I started." I didn't know it yet, not that night, not even the next morning, that Norma had already made a phone call 6 months earlier that had set part of this in motion, before Craig ever opened his mouth. Sid and I talked for 2 hours and 20 minutes. When I left Upper Arlington at 8:53 and drove back to Drexel Avenue, the broad outlines of what needed to happen were clear. The details were Leonard Fitch's job. The decision, the one I'd been circling for 8 months, had been made in the first 10 minutes on Sid's couch. The Hartwell Family Trust was going to be finished, properly, the way it should have been done before the wedding, frankly, and would have been done before the wedding if I hadn't let sentiment slow my paperwork. Norma was in the kitchen when I got home. The guests were gone. The tables were being handled by the rental company in the morning. The house was quiet in the particular way it gets quiet after 50 people leave. The kind of quiet that has texture to it, like the air is still processing what happened. She handed me a cup of coffee without asking if I wanted one, which meant she'd been waiting. "How's Sid?" she asked. "Good. Wearing a reindeer sweater. Good for Sid." She leaned against the counter. "Leonard Fitch first thing tomorrow?" I looked at my wife. 34 years. She knew about the January 4th meeting. She knew what the January 4th meeting was for. She had watched the same 4 years of Craig's performances that I had watched, from the same table, with the same face. "Leonard Fitch, first thing tomorrow," I confirmed. Norma picked up her coffee. "I'll make sure you're up by 7. I didn't know yet what she'd done 6 months ago. I wouldn't find out until January 2nd. But standing in my kitchen on Christmas night, I looked at my wife's face, completely steady, completely calm, the face of a woman who has never once in 34 years panicked about anything, and I thought, she already knew. She knew before I did. She always knows before I do. I went to bed at 10 p.m. on December 25th, feeling for the first time in 4 years, completely clear. Welcome back to Dad's sweet revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to want to be here for what comes next. Derek called me the next morning, December 26th, 7:45 a.m., before I'd even finished my first coffee. "Dad, morning. I've been thinking about last night. So have I." Craig, a pause. The pause of a man choosing words with care. Derek learned that from me, and I am proud of it every single time. "Dad, that wasn't a joke. That was something he wanted to say and dressed up as a joke so it had somewhere to land." "I know what it was. Grandma Edna asked me on her way out if you were okay." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you were better than okay. I told her I'd seen that look on your face exactly once before in my life, and the last time it happened a competitor lost a contract they'd been counting on for 2 years." A pause. She laughed. She said, "Good. Your father's too quiet a man for anyone to think quiet means harmless. 81 years old, sharp as the day she was born. Leonard Fitch at 9, Derek. I'd like you there. I'll be there at 8:30. Most men, when they're angry, need to break something. A conversation. A silence. A piece of furniture if they're that kind of man. 40 years in business taught me that the most expensive thing you can break when you're angry is your own position. So I learned a long time ago to sit with it, let it cool, let it become something useful. By the time I walked into Leonard Fitch's office on East Broad Street at 9 a.m. on December 26th, I had slept 7 hours and the anger had finished its process. What was left was something quieter and considerably more dangerous. Thursday, December 26th, 9 a.m. Leonard Fitch has been my estate attorney for 16 years. He is 64, methodical, and has the specific unhurriedness of a man who has never once been rushed into a bad document. His office smells like old paper and good sense and hasn't changed its furniture since 2009, which I find reassuring. He had the draft trust documents on the conference table when Derek and I walked in. He'd pulled them the night before after my call. Jean, a handshake. Then to Derek. "Derek, coffee?" "Please," Derek said. We sat. Leonard opened the folder. No preamble. Leonard Fitch does not do preamble. "You want to finalize the structure you and I discussed in April. Lacey's trust fully protected. Irrevocable. Her name alone. Derek as primary operational heir. The business interests going to the family entity rather than distributing outright." "That's right. The decision you were uncertain about in April was Lacey's trust structure, whether to make it a lifetime irrevocable or leave room for marital adjustment. I'm not uncertain anymore. All right?" He made a note. "What changed?" "Christmas dinner," Derek said. Leonard looked between us, made another note. Did not ask for details, because Leonard Fitch has been doing this for 35 years and understands that the specific catalyst for an estate decision is generally less important than the decision itself. "Irrevocable personal trust in Lacey's name," he said. "Income generating from the residential portfolio, not marital property. Protected in any dissolution. She receives distributions regardless of marital status. Craig Pruitt is named nowhere in the document." "Correct." Leonard closed the folder, picked up his pen. "I'll have the final draft to you by December 30th, signing on January 2nd if that works." Derek was quiet on the way out. We walked to my car in the East Broad Street parking lot in the December cold, and he stood with his hands in his coat pockets, looking at the ground the way he does when he's organizing something in his mind. "She's going to find out," he said finally. "Lacey." "I know. How do you want to handle that?" "I'm going to tell her myself, before she hears it from anyone else." I unlocked the car. "But not today. Today I'm going to let Craig have a normal Thursday. He's earned his last one." Derek looked at me across the roof of the car. "You're terrifying, you know that? Your grandmother says the same thing. Get in the car." The week between Christmas and New Year's has a specific quality in the Hartwell house. Norma takes it as the one true rest period of the year. No events, no obligations, slow mornings, long evenings. I usually spend it reviewing the year's numbers with Sid and doing the thinking I've been putting off since September. That week I spent it differently. December 27th, I had coffee with Frank Caulfield. Not about business. Just the two of us at the kitchen table on Drexel Avenue. The way we've been doing since 1998. Frank is one of those men who says exactly what he means and nothing else. There is no version of a conversation with Frank Caulfield that involves subtext. He sat down, wrapped both hands around his mug, and said, "I've been thinking about Wednesday night." "So have I." That wasn't nothing, Jean. A man doesn't say something like that in front of 50 people by accident. He's been holding it. "I know. You going to be okay?" I looked at Frank. 22 years. This man has sat across from me in meetings where we both had a lot to lose, and I have never once seen him flinch. "Frank, have you ever in 22 years seen me not be okay?" He thought about it, genuinely considered it, the way Frank does everything. "No," he said finally, "but I've seen you quiet before something big. You've got that quiet right now. Then you know the answer to your question." He nodded, drank his coffee. We talked about the bowl games for 40 minutes. I didn't know it yet, But Frank had already called Rhonda Osei, our shared business partner, on December 26th and briefed her on what happened. Rhonda, who had met Craig twice and on both occasions found reasons to be somewhere else, had a reaction that Frank described to me later as concise and largely unprintable. December 28th, Lacey called. She and Craig live in Dublin, Ohio, a suburb northwest of Columbus, 15 minutes from Drexel, on a good traffic day. She called mid-morning, and from the first word I could tell she'd been working up to it. Dad. Hey, sweetheart. I want to talk about Wednesday. Okay. I know what Craig said was a pause. The pause of a woman who is trying to be fair to two people simultaneously, which is an exhausting position I would not wish on anyone. It was wrong. I want you to know I told him that. I appreciate that. He thinks it was just a joke that landed badly. I told him that the reason it landed the way it did is because it wasn't a joke. It was... She stopped again. Dad, I told him that in confidence. About the Franklinton building. I told him because I was trying to explain to him why you don't talk about failure like it's shameful. Because you taught me that. And he used it. There it is. I know you did, Lacey. I'm not angry at you. Are you angry at him? I thought about Leonard Fitch's office, about the folder on the conference table, about the irrevocable trust that would be signed in 5 days. I said. Carefully true. I'm past that now. Dad. Her voice shifted, lower, more direct. The voice she uses when she's done being careful. What did you do? Nothing you need to worry about yet. That's not Dad. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be reassuring. It's meant to be accurate. A pause. Lacey, do you trust me? A long moment. Yes. Obviously yes. Then let me take care of a few things, and I'll sit down with you before January 4th and tell you everything. Okay? Another pause. Longer. Okay. How are you doing? Not Craig. You. The question surprised her. I heard it surprise her. A small intake of breath, like she'd been braced for a different conversation. And this one caught her off guard. She stopped. I've been thinking a lot, Dad, since Wednesday, about some things. Good, I said. That's the right thing to be doing. I would find out on January 2nd, and it would change the shape of everything I thought I was building. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps when you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do. But it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, thank you. For real. Now let's finish this. December 30th. Leonard Fitch sent the draft. I read it at my desk in the home office on Drexel Avenue with a cup of coffee and the specific satisfaction of a document that says exactly what it needs to say. Lacey's trust. Irrevocable. Personal. Income generating. Her distributions beginning at signing and continuing regardless of any change in her marital status. The residential portfolio. 11 properties, steady income, the foundation of everything I built before the commercial work took over. Placed in trust for her benefit. Craig Pruitt. Named nowhere. Not in anger. Not as punishment. Simply as the accurate reflection of a decision that should have been made before the wedding and wasn't, because I am occasionally too slow to formalize what I already know. I called Sid. Draft looks right, I said. Signing January 2nd? New_line. January 2nd. And Sid. I paused. Thank you for December 25th. Jean, you showed up at my door on Christmas night. I know. In retrospect, Sid said the reindeer sweater was probably not the power look for that conversation. It really wasn't. Next time, give me 20 minutes notice. Next time, don't wear novelty knitwear on a holiday. He laughed. We hung up. I called Derek next, told him January 2nd. Then I went to find Norma. She was in the sunroom. Reading. She looked up when I came in, measured, steady. That face that has been the most reliable thing in my life for 34 years. Draft's good, I said. Signing Thursday. Then, without looking up, I need to tell you something. Before Thursday. I sat down across from her. Okay. She closed the book, set it on the side table, folded her hands in her lap with the particular deliberateness of a woman who has been deciding how to say something for a while. 6 months ago, she said, Lacey came to me. not to tell me anything specific, but she said something in passing, the way she does when she's not ready to say it directly, about the marriage, about feeling managed, about Craig's habit of making her small in public and then telling her privately that she was too sensitive. I looked at my wife. I didn't tell you because Lacey asked me not to. She wasn't ready. Norma met my eyes, but I called Leonard Fitch the next week. I didn't tell him what Lacey said. I just asked him, as a personal question, not as a client question, whether the trust structure you'd been discussing could be modified to fully protect Lacey independent of her marriage. He told me the irrevocable structure you'd been considering in April was exactly the right instrument. And I told him to keep the January 4th meeting on the calendar and to be ready to finalize. She picked up her book. I just didn't know Craig was going to helpfully move up the timeline. The sunroom was quiet. December afternoon, gray light through the windows, the Bexley neighborhood doing its slow winter thing outside. You set this up, I said. I set the conditions, she said. You made the decision. This woman I have been married to for 34 years, who taught 4th grade for 22 of them, and raised 2 children and built a life in this house, and has never once in all of those years needed anyone to tell her what to do, or when. Norma Hartwell, I said. She turned a page. Go make dinner, Jean. I'll tell you the rest after. There's a particular kind of quiet that happens in a house after a big decision gets made, and before the world finds out about it. It's not tense, it's not anxious, it's the quiet of something already done. The way a room feels after you've moved the furniture, and before anyone else has seen the new arrangement. The Hartwell house on Drexel Avenue had that quiet from December 30th through January 1st. January 2nd changed the arrangement for everyone. Thursday, January 2nd, 9 a.m. Leonard Fitch's conference table again. Same room, same old paper smell, same chairs. Different weight to the morning. Derek arrived first, which is his way. He's been early to everything since he was 8 years old, and I have never had to ask him twice for anything in his life. Norma arrived with me. Sid Baxter came as a witness, still in professional clothes, no reindeer to speak of. Leonard walked us through the final document. Everything is discussed. Lacey's irrevocable personal trust, income generating from the residential portfolio, fully protected. Derek as primary operational heir to the business entity. The family LLC restructured to reflect current reality rather than the optimistic assumptions of a father who believed in 1998 that families stay simple. I signed at 9:47 a.m. Derek shook my hand after. No speech. That's not how the Hartwell men do things. Just a handshake, firm, present. 38 years of shared blood in it. Norma squeezed my arm. Done. Lacey arrived at the house at 11. I hadn't told her about the signing. Not the timing when she walked into the kitchen and found Norma, Derek, and me at the table with coffee. She stopped in the doorway and did the math on the room. It's done, she said. Not a question. Sit down, sweetheart. She sat. I told her everything. The trust structure, what it meant, what she received and when and how, and why Craig's name appeared nowhere in the document, and why that was entirely intentional and not negotiable. She was quiet through all of it. The particular stillness she has that is entirely her mother's, processing rather than shutting down, working something out rather than shutting something off. When I finished, she was quiet for another moment. Then, I want to tell you something, Dad. Okay. I had a conversation with Craig on December 26th. She wrapped both hands around her mug. I asked him to repeat the joke, the one from Christmas dinner. Without the table, without the wine, without 50 people laughing. Just him, me, our kitchen, the actual words. Derek looked up. He tried twice, Lacey said. Both times he got about halfway through and stopped. The second time he stopped, he said, "It sounds different without the context." And I told him that was exactly the point, that the context was the problem, that the context was my father's table and my father's guests and my father's story that I gave him in confidence, and that he chose to perform it. The kitchen was quiet. I've been in counseling for 4 months, she said. On my own. Not couples. Mine. She looked at me directly. I've been working on some things. About patterns. About what I've been allowing because I thought it was easier than naming it. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The Christmas thing wasn't the first time, she said. It was just the first time it happened in front of enough people that I couldn't explain it away to myself. Norma reached across the table and covered Lacey's hand. Said nothing. Sometimes Norma's nothing says everything. I'm not asking you to fix anything, Dad, Lacey said. I know you already did. I saw the document. She almost smiled. Just the corner of her mouth. Just slightly. It's the most Jean Hartwell thing you've ever done. Completely quiet, completely thorough, and completely done before anyone knew you were doing it. Your grandmother says the same thing, Derek said. I know. She called me this morning. Now Lacey actually smiled. Small and tired and real. She said your father learned that from watching me handle your grandfather for 40 years. Now you're going to learn it from watching him. Edna, 81 years old. Still the sharpest person in any room she enters. Craig called at 2 p.m. Not my phone. Lacey's, which she was still holding when it buzzed on my kitchen table. She looked at the screen. Looked at me. You don't have to be here for this, I said. I want to be. She picked up. Hey. I could hear Craig's voice from across the table. Not the words. Just the tone. Upbeat. The particular energy of a man who believes Wednesday's dinner has been processed and filed and everyone has moved on. Lacey listened for about 30 seconds. Then, Craig, I need to tell you something. I was at Dad's this morning. A pause on his end. He finalized the estate documents today. I want you to understand what that means because I think you've had assumptions about how this family's assets are structured, and I'd rather you hear it from me than piece it together later. The tone on Craig's end shifted. I didn't need to hear the words. My trust is in my name alone. It generates income for me independent of anything else. It doesn't pass through our joint accounts. It isn't marital property, and it isn't contingent on my being married. A pause. I'm not telling you this is a threat. I'm telling you this is information. Because the conversation I want to have with you tonight needs to happen between two people who know exactly where they stand. She hung up at 2:04, set the phone down, looked at the table for a moment. Then she looked up at me. Thank you, Dad, she said. Not for the trust, for the example, for being the kind of man who handles things quietly and completely, and without making anyone watch. I picked up my coffee. Don't cry, Jean Hartwell. You're 63 years old. Your grandmother's line, I managed. Our line, Lacey said. Walt Pruitt called me at 4:15 that afternoon. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought about it for exactly 1 second and picked up, because Walt Pruitt calling me on January 2nd had a specific entertainment value I wasn't willing to pass up. Jean. Walt Pruitt. Walt. Craig called me. He mentioned there were some estate adjustments on your end, and I just thought maybe it would be good to... Walt. Very pleasant. Very calm. What exactly were you hoping to accomplish with this call? A pause. The pause of a man who'd rehearsed an opening and nothing after it. I just thought maybe there'd been some misunderstanding. Around the holidays, people say things. There wasn't a misunderstanding. Jean, Craig said what he meant to say in front of 50 people at a table I paid for. Walt. I heard it clearly. There was no misunderstanding. I let that sit for exactly 2 seconds. I appreciated the clarity, actually. It helped me finish some paperwork I'd been putting off. Now, is there anything else? No, Walt said. I don't. No. Happy New Year, Walt. I hung up, walked to the sunroom where Norma was reading. Walt Pruitt called. She turned a page. What did he want? To feel like he'd done something. Did it work? Briefly. I sat down for about 11 seconds. The late afternoon light was doing its January thing through the sunroom windows, thin and pale and entirely indifferent to the Pruitt family's concerns. Norma. She looked up. 6 months ago, when you called Leonard. I looked at my wife. You knew it was going to come to this, didn't you? She considered it. Genuinely considered it. The way Norma considers things. Fully and without hurry. I knew Lacey was going to have to make a decision, she said. I didn't know when. I just wanted to make sure that when she did, the ground under her was solid. She looked at me. That's what you do for your children, Jean. You make the ground solid. Whatever they decide to do on top of it is theirs. I sat with that. 34 years. This woman. This life. The ground is solid, I thought. She made sure of that long before Christmas dinner. Lacey and Craig are in counseling as of January 6th. Couples counseling, Her choice, her condition. Whether it holds is not my story to tell. It is hers, and she is writing it with the same clarity she showed at my kitchen table. And that is all I can ask. Derek and I went back to work on January 3rd. The company is in good shape. The Bexley house is in good shape. Frank Caulfield called to say the new year looked solid, and I told him I agreed and meant it. Edna called me on January 4th, the original date of the meeting that Craig's Christmas performance had moved up by 10 days. "How did everything go?" she asked. "Good, Mom. Everything went the way it was supposed to go. Did that boy learn something?" "I think so. Whether he keeps it is his business." The sound of an 81-year-old woman who has survived enough to have opinions about what people learn and whether it takes. "You handled it right, Jean. Your father would have made a scene. You made a document. You always said paperwork outlasts feelings." "I always say a lot of things," Edna said. "You're one of the ones who actually listened." I hung up, sat at my desk, looked at the Bexley neighborhood through the window, the street I've lived on for 31 years, the street where I raised Derek and Lacey, the street where Norma planted the front garden that looks best in May and gets comments from strangers every single year. 63 years. 40 of them building something worth protecting. Craig Pruitt stood up at my Christmas table and took a free shot at the foundation. By January 3rd, the foundation was stronger than it had ever been, and Craig Pruitt had a new understanding of what it's built from. That's all. That's the whole story. Some men get loud when they need to make a point. I got a document. Mine held up better. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.